All right. Hey, everybody. How's it going today? Welcome back to the live show. I am super excited to talk today because we are going to talk about the oldest, schoolest, punkest, old school punk band, Crass. You may have seen the patch on a smelly punk rocker. You may have gotten the tattoo, which now could be just kind of a blurred black blob. We're going to talk today about the ethos, the memories of how Crass changed my life, and this really great album, Stations of the Crass. So, let's do it. All right. Yeah, thank you for joining today. Let's see what we've got. Back today, I wrote and listened to this album all about this last night again, and oh man, that was an experience. It was kind of like a mind-blowing time warp experience and really, really enjoyable. So today we have with us, as always, ASMR water. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm. I have, in honor of Crass, really, really intense coffee with an offensive message on my coffee cup because, that's how I like to start my day. It says, F you, I'm awesome. Good reminder in the morning. And the candle we're going to light today is a little tiny black one. Let's see. I think this is a scented something. I didn't really look. No, it doesn't say. It's got a little smell to it. Let's light that up. For the look, obviously I had to put my hair into the faux hawk, clearly. We're doing punk rock and we're doing some of the best, chef's kiss, freaking best punk rock, old school that's ever been made. So, in honor of that, cheers. Put this guy up here. Of course, dressing wise, I wanted to do the makeup since, they have themes of just sort of like extreme feminism. There's some feminist themes. There's an entire album that is like female singers, feminist themes. I wanted to keep the makeup a little neutral. I know, we could do what we want, but we're going with that. And then for the shirt, I don't really have any punk rock shirts anymore. Man, I had a lot of like punk rock t-shirts back in the day when I was a teenager. A lot. Dead Kennedys, Misfits. I used to rock all that stuff. And of course, I've got this very like army militant jacket with the man, I like this thing. I've actually never worn it before. So, there's always a chance. And here we are. So, all right. Yeah, Crass. I had a lot to say about this. I really wrote for a long, this is why it took me so long to start and get on the live and make this video because I wrote for like a really long time about my memories of it. And sometimes I just like jot out notes, but this time I like wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. So there was a lot to say and a lot to remember because this band genuinely like did completely change my life um in terms of like the sounds that I had never heard. I'd never heard anything like this band. Like they're really a sort of art punk and they are the very beginnings um of punk rock in the late 70s, early 80s. So, they get a lot of credibility and appreciation for being there at that time. So, let's read about them a little bit before I just go off talking about my memories of them. If you've never heard Crass, it's going to be an experience. If you like punk rock, you definitely you have to listen to Crass. I mean, like it's just required. So, pull up this album, pull up any Crass really. Be prepared. It's punk. It's very, very punk. And it's a good time. So, let's you know what? we're not going with Wikipedia just at the beginning. If I want to talk about Crass and get a description, I want to get it, for them straight from the source. So I found this really great interview that one of the creators, Penny Rimbaud, did. And there's a picture right there from this uh, new noise magazine.com. So let me pull this up here and we'll just go with their description of what they say about Crass, because I thought I read this. This is a really great article. I'll link it in the description below whenever the video is uh, is up after the live. Yeah, check out this article because it was really well written, and we'll read some things about it as it goes on also. So we're talking about Crass. Let's see what New Noise magazine has to say about them. This article was written in 2020. The original anarcho punk band, or at least the first to embrace the title and live by its tenets. Yes, they were very, adhering to their message. If you've ever seen a band wear all black on stage, seen an album cover that embraces monochromatic depicts of state oppression, or if you've ever heard or been a member of a band living communally as a countermand to the edicts of the state and the demands of capitalism, then you've encountered the long intellectual lineage that Crass has bequeathed to the artists and revolutionaries of the underground. Yes. Cohering together in Essex, England in 1977 as an expression of the radical tendencies and an unquestionable need for a potent artistic outlet for the expression of their positions, the band, or collective, as they may more rightly be referred to, famously consisted of vocalists Yves Libertine, Steve Ignorant, Joie de Vivre, bassist Pete Wright, guitarist N.A. Palmer, and Phil Free. Visualist and performances artist G. Voucher, and lyricist and producer Penny Rimbaud, who I believe was also the drummer. We'll be able to see in some pictures as we look. Working out of a collective living space known as Dial House, they lived and worked communally, creating some of the best remembered sonic art and socio-political commentary of the era, while developing a dedicated audience of disaffected youth eager to learn more about how to confront the state, oppression, and capitalist imperialism. They also gained the attention of the British authorities, who placed the band under surveillance, even going so far as to tap the phone at Dial House. It is for this reason that some members of the group, even to this day, cannot be connected by phone. Yeah. So, just that right there. They were a punk band. They had a message. They had beliefs. But it goes to show you, if you get the attention of the government of any country, it goes to show how powerful that art can be, how powerful music and art can be. And not, I wanted to say like to influence the masses, but I don't really think I would put it like that. I would put it as art is the expression, the result of the feeling. And it's a way for people to, have some sort of inclusivity in that expression. And of course, a powerful medium in order to be able to express those really more disturbing feelings. And so it just, whenever you put all of that together in a cohesive piece, now you're really like gaining some momentum. And that momentum at times can be dangerous. It doesn't have to just be art. But that's what we're doing here, art and music. So, Crass, our anarchist art punk band, would eventually disband in 1984 following a final fateful performance in support of the miners' strike in Wales. The inability of the miners to overcome the aggressive neoliberal agenda of the Thatcher government is often seen as the beginning of the end of organized labor's role as an effective political force in the 20th century. Despite this, the battle against the corrosive and inherently corrupt mechanism of capital continues into the 21st century in new and varied forms. And then it goes on to talk about the new and varied forms that it evolved into. And of course, this was written in 2020, talking about Bernie Sanders. Yeah. So to the point, political music, they had opinions and they weren't afraid to express them. And of course, Thatcher's government at the time. So we're going to take a look at all of that because, I think it's important to get at least like you don't have to know every single nuance of what happened with like the English government and the UK at that time in history. But it's important, I think, to have just like a little bit of background so you kind of know where somebody's coming from if you're listening to this music. So let's go back and take a look at the wiki. There we are right here. There. Crass was an English art collective and punk band. And years active. That's what we want to see. 1977 to 1984, which they actually released albums, I believe, from 79 to 83. So they were doing their thing for maybe about 7 years. But for that time period, the influence of them just, it's like you have those like subvariants of culture that for whatever reason throughout history just like will not die. Like if you go to any freaking city or high school or like you're generally always gonna have like goth kids, skaters, and punk rockers that continue. Like Crass does not die. The message of Crass, the feeling and the energy, the intensity, the anger of Crass, lives on. So we listed the members in that article there, but here's a list right here, and dude, this is freaking long. 10, 5, 11? That's a lot of people. But to the point, we've got a good mixture of men and women. And I appreciate that in that you've got male and female vocalists. I really like that mixture and the variation there. And you've got their album Penis Envy was mostly the women and women's topics, very feminist topics. So like, I really like how there's a lot of equality in their performances in that way. Yeah, let's look at their discography real quick and see about their albums. So you've got The Feeding of the 5,000, Stations of the Crass, which we're going to talk about today, Penis Envy, as I just mentioned, the feminist female album, Christ, the album, Yes, Sir, I Will, and 10 Notes on a Summer's Day, which, as you can see, was released in 1986, so after they broke up. And I got that one. I only just got that one in the last couple of years, but it's really like, I think it was only maybe 35 minutes of 2 songs or something. It's different. I can't exactly remember, but this is our main. And then the one that people may know that they may have gotten is this Best Before. Yeah, there it is right there. That's a big one that people usually have. and it's a compilation of their singles and other tracks released after the fact. So I wanted to mention, I mentioned in the intro about the tattoo, and here's that logo. So you can imagine a lot of people, if you were like a punk rocker back in the day, or if you got punk rock tattoos, generally some of the more common ones were the Crimson Ghost, the Misfits logo tattoo. It's like the Misfits little face. And then also the Crass logo here. But if you know anything about tattoos, and you can imagine, like the white lines of this tattoo are just going to be empty skin, and then the rest of it is going to be black. So it essentially ends up being like a black circle that eventually is like a blob and kind of like melting together. But also, it's a crossed out cross. So like that's a commitment. And if you're gonna, have that and show that off into any years in the future, you have to be damn well prepared for like everybody to see it and comment on it, because they will. And I mean, that's a choice if you want to make that choice. But like, if you, feel that you want to cover it up at any point, then that's a difficult cover up, because there's not much you can do with like an almost all black circle. Like, you really have to do something to disguise, and putting color over black can be difficult. So keep that in mind. I like had something about their logo that I wanted to talk about. It's in here somewhere. Here's a little blurb about it. So yeah, there's their logo. Conceived and intended as cover artwork for the self-published pamphlet version of Rimbaud's Christ's Reality Asylum, the Crass logo was an amalgam of several icons of authority, including the Christian cross. We can see in there. The swastika, the Union Jack, the English flag, the UK British flag, and the two-headed, I've heard this pronounced Ouroboros and Ouroboros, but this is the snake eating its own tail, or the dragon eating its own tail, which I wanted to point this out about the logo because, like, I did not know that until I started learning about this as we're reading. I never noticed in that logo that it had, like, the snake's head and the head here. That's interesting. And for them, symbolizing the idea that power will eventually destroy itself. Which is not really how I would interpret that as a more spiritual side of it. It's like the end is always the beginning. One door closes, a window is open, but okay, if you want to interpret it in that way. Using such deliberately mixed messages was part of Crass's strategy of presenting themselves as a barrage of contradictions, challenging audiences to, in Rimbaud's words, make your own fucking minds up. This included loud, aggressive music to promote a pacifist message, a reference to their Dadaist performance art backgrounds, and situationists' ideas. Okay. So even in their logo, they're using an amalgam of different other logos, icons of authority, to sort of have chaos in the representation of their message, a barrage of contradictions. So I found that interesting. I always thought it was just a crossed out cross, but there's more going on to that. So that was interesting to learn. Yeah. And so their music, their sound, their music, punk rock, right? I would say, and this is like, if we're going to use a barrage of contradictions, here's one right here for you in this analogy. If you are a punk rock connoisseur, if you like punk rock, this is your first class seat, baby. It's your private jet of punk rock. It's your higher art of punk rock. It's the old school best punk rock, in my opinion. There's some other punk bands that are up there with it for me. I would put Dead Kennedys up in that category. I like a little Subhumans. That's some good stuff. But this is not, your radio friendly pop punk type stuff. So next I want to talk about the memories that I have of Crass and how this band changed my life. So, yeah. I went off on this because there's some really great memories for me. The first time I heard Crass was it was one of those moments for me musically that just totally blows your mind. Like the way, the first time Eric Clapton described hearing Jimi Hendrix, it was like I never heard anything like this before. Nothing. It changes you. Like, I mean, this was just one of many moments that's happened to me, but it's like any sort of new experience where you've never done or heard or seen anything like it. It really like opens your mind into another dimension in a kind of way. Like for me, another one was hearing Slash play the solo in Sweet Child of Mine. I was 9 when I heard that, and it blew my mind, and it led me down the path to as soon as I heard that, I was like, I have to play guitar. I want to play guitar just like Slash, just like this. And it changed my life. So, these are the ways that music can change you. And if you are like a fan, or if you play music, or if you've had these type of moments, like tell me some of these moments that you've had in the comments that have changed your life. Because this was definitely one for me. A really, really pivotal moment. In multiple ways, really. I would say musically and emotionally. So picture this. It's 1994. Yours truly. I was like 14 or 15. Like 15, I think. And as a kid, I was a couple of years removed from what for me was a traumatic, life-changing event, which was my parents' divorce. So, as a family, we had gone from being stable, having two-parent, like decent income household, steady as she goes, very stable family. And that was just that was the world to me. And it went from that comfort to immediate and extreme upheaval. One day, my father just announced that he was leaving, and he was immediately gone. Now, I'm sure there were reasons. There's no upset at this point as an adult. Relationships are hard, marriages were hard. But as a kid, I didn't know anything about what was going on, like blindsided. I mean, who would even imagine that that would happen to them? There was really, now looking back, I guess there were like subtle indications, but at the time there were none. I thought our family was just like what it is. But so we were kind of plunged like instantly, comparatively into poverty. Like we really went from a two, decent middle class, upper middle class, um, income family to a working single mother who was having to raise two teenagers by herself. And all of this happened when I was 12, like right when I hit puberty. So, a young, developing brain is struggling to cope with like everything that's happened and understand the world. And at first, I think my response to it, because you're struggling with like trauma and grief of everything just changing so violently. I really developed like a sort of a hippie persona, like in the sense that I was trying to protect my naivety. Um, so I went into immediately like all you need is love, um, nothing angry, nothing controversial, everything pure, no makeup, no haircuts. Like, this is the way that the world should be, if we just didn't have these horrible things. So I only really, for a long time, listened to stuff like the Beatles, Janis Joplin, Pink Floyd, The Doors, the Woodstock soundtrack, Hair, the Broadway musical. Love that one. Which is all great. Like, I love that stuff, and I'm really glad that I did experience like all of that music, and I'm going to talk a lot about a lot of it too. Um, but basically, in my mind, there was sort of like an ideal way of life in relating to each other that we should be striving for and we're striving for. If only we could like adjust ourselves to achieve it. And we wouldn't have to live in so much pain. And there's some elements of this with Crass too. I mean, they are all about peace and love, but in a very different manner. But I think for me, up until the point when I heard them, I was in the stage of grief where I was essentially like shutting the door onto anything bad. Only love and light. Now, as an adult, looking back, I can clearly see my child self like moving through grief. But how do you don't understand that or what's happening when you're 14, right? Like you don't know that. But so I had the blinders on, and those blinders were really working for me until one day. I remember this moment like so clearly. I walked into a room and at my friend's house, and I was standing there like stoned in my like patterned moo. I was very, very hippie dressed, stoned and confused. And somebody said, "Listen to this." And then they put on the cassette tape, and it was Crass. And it totally blew my mind. Like, genuinely. I'll never forget the first time I heard that, because it was that snare drum, like tight, dry, cracking like a whip or like a gunshot. The tight, militant, buzzy, marching guitars. It's like a saw, like shredding through the air. And the bass was like walking everywhere, very melodically and artfully. It was not freaking holding down anything. And chaos. And the vocal. It's like the most obnoxious singing / spoken thick cockneyed accent I'd ever heard, saying, "You think guitars and microphones are just fucking toys?" It's like, no, we're using them as weapons, they were saying. I'm like, whoa. I mean, at first I didn't know what to think. I was like, do I like this? And then I was like, this is intense. And then they said, "So what if Jesus died on the cross? So what about the fucker? I don't give a toss." I'm like, did you really just say that? Are we allowed to say that? I don't know if we're allowed to say that. It's like, no, they said that. They said that. And like, this was a big, I can't even, this was a pivotal moment. It was like a complete turning point for me. Like my head almost exploded hearing the intensity um, that some of these things were said. And like my eyes were just opened. And the sounds of the instruments, I'd never heard anything like that before. And the subject matter, like to just come out and say it. And a lot of times not angry, not screaming, but really like matter of factly questioning like all of our reality. It's just like, so what? So what? Like my life was completely changed. Yeah. And for me personally, that entry into punk rock, like being so severe in a way, it was kind of like the moment in my own grief that really broke my facade. It's like, how they say with grief, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay, you're chugging along until just like boom, one day you're not. And this was the moment that I was not. And I was like, oh, okay, like we can't block this out anymore. We have to actually look at it, like the way things are now. And when I really looked at it, as a kid, being 15, like it wasn't pretty, you know? The world wasn't pretty. I saw that it was disgusting. It was a broken trust. It was that love, marriage, and kids weren't actually important. And it was that I wasn't important as a person. So that actually, I saw all the stability that I believed in and took for granted as reality wasn't actually real. And I now, being so young, like had to face a world in which I was totally on my own and way too young to be, too young and scared, very scared. And so your defense mechanisms start to rise up and you have to do something to accommodate for that. And so I immediately, at the time this opened up, like switched into this survival mentality. And I was angry, angry for many reasons. There they are again. Yeah. And thus it began that I began to feel deeply, deeply in love with punk rock. Because at least somebody was saying it, they were saying what I felt. They were actually pointing out like all of it, any of it. And at least if this is what it is, if it is this disgusting and this is really what it is, like we're calling it what it is instead of denying it now. And so they did. Yeah. So crass. Here they are here. One of the first in the first wave of old school hardcore punk bands. And so punk rock, right? As a genre. When you say that to someone, you have to think like, what does that mean to them? Much like jazz and EDM, you've got so many variants and subgenres of punk rock. Like the average of what might come to mind when you talk about it and somebody thinks about it, it's like maybe pop punk, the average person thinking about this stuff, like skate punk, a little harder, like skate punk. Or, God forbid, the female pop singers who adopted a punkier type look. Not really the sound of punk, not really at all. But people have that in mind because it was commercially successful. But mostly, in general, I would say, if you had to describe like kind of the run of the mill, it'd be like 4/4 time, 3 chord riffs, power chords, fast tempo, angsty, sometimes obnoxious, sometimes offensive, but Crass and some of the other bands, that I mentioned, are just there's so much more than that in terms of punk rock. Like you have to call it punk, I think, because it is the origin, like the OG beginnings of punk rock. But with Crass, listen to this variety, right? Spoken word poetry, singing, screaming, two female singers, two male singers, sound effects, wandering bass lines, that drum line, the militant snare, guitars that sound like buzz saws, and subject matter questioning everything around them directly, criticizing everything severely, religion, power, their government at the time, the capitalist system as a whole, feminism and women's roles, how men treat women, the way that men are brought up to be so like toxic masculine, although that term didn't really exist at the time. Farming and environmental practices, they get into that. War, very anti-war. Famine, all forms of social injustice they were talking about. So such a wide array of topics in their music, as well as a wide array of creative ideas musically, and not sugar-coated. They're directly calling that shit out. And then so as you start to listen to their music and listen to what they're saying, you start to think too, why? Why have we set things up the way that we have? Why have we constructed things in this way? And then you start to, continue to question, like, who decided all of this? And then you start to look at things from the outside as you continue to question. And it becomes like watching everyone do the dumbest dance every day, round and round and round itself, that they don't even seem to know like that they're in. And so for a while, you yourself are on the outside with everyone else who's on the outside. Angry, hurt, confused, and just like from the outside looking in, watching the system perpetuate itself. Upset, angry about all of the injustice, angry along with your friends about everything, the death, the suffering, the state of the world, angry about the state of your own life and everything that's happened to you. And your music reflects that. A lot of music does reflect whatever you need it to reflect in the moment. You're going to choose things, can choose things based upon what you're going through, your own feelings, or whatever feelings you want to provoke within yourself, or attempt to get yourself into. So, right now, if you listen to this, whatever feelings you're trying to provoke or are experiencing may not be like anarchist punk rock. It may be like a sad love song instead. Who knows, could be anything. But musically, Crass had a vision and a mission and a message and a lifestyle they were broadcasting up until they weren't. And we'll read about their disbandment in a little bit too. How do these things come to be? How do these things fall apart? Yeah, but musically, their stuff is genius. And we'll do all of the audio analysis too. Musically, they captured those feelings. They captured those moments in time, that vision, those sounds that stands the test of time. It's the sound and the music that really stands. So, but before we talk about the audio analysis, let's talk about the type of problems that you could have that may lead to disbandment. Singing about politics or singing about like current events. So, Crass's material was recorded from 1978 to 1983. And of course, they are English from England. So, a lot about Margaret Thatcher, which is fine, of course. You know, you can sing whatever you want to sing about. But if it's like a time based period, it immediately dates itself if you're going to sing about politics or current events. Or even, if you have fans from other countries, like, or even different regions of your own countries, and you're singing about like locality of the city or region that you're in, your fans may not have any idea of what you're talking about. And so, like, they may not have as much of a connection. Like, I loved it. I loved the music just because it sounded awesome and was angry and questioned everything and rebellious. But really, it was a moment, and mainly their moment, or their moment for everyone around them in that moment. And I can only say this like looking back as it's passed by, because, in the moment, it is your moment when you're in it. But like, what is this, 46 years later? We can see that history continues to pass. And I asked myself as I wrote and thought about this, it's like, what am I going to do? Like, put on music about 1980s politics in England and get mad in my living room when I'm almost 50? It's like I said, probably not. And, but maybe I'll change my mind as I listen to it. We'll find out. And then I thought, in fact, who even is Margaret Thatcher? Do we know who she is? Do you know who she is after all of this time? So then I looked her up. I don't know if I brought her down here. Let's look her up. We'll just read a little bit about her, so like you at least have any kind of idea what we're talking about here. Here she is. Very proper. That's some giant hair. Yeah. All right, Margaret Thatcher. So, was a British stateswoman who served as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom from 1979 to 1990. So this is who we're talking about, the Prime Minister of the UK at the time, and leader of the Conservative Party from 1975 to 1990. She was the longest-serving British Prime Minister of the 20th century and the first woman to hold the office. As Prime Minister, she implemented policies that came to be known as Thatcherism. A Soviet journalist dubbed her the Iron Lady, a nickname that became associated with her uncompromising politics and leadership style. So, this is what we were mad about at the time. Conservative ran with a lot of authority, an iron fist, uncompromising. And I will say, no, I don't want this. I don't want these types of things. I'm recording this. I am an American living in the United States in 2026. I did not want this. I don't get political on here, but if we're going to try to find the positive in it, which I always do, damn, that's some good punk rock to come out of these types of situations. And I tell you, man, that's what I was saying recently when our own country has come into a more conservative iron fist mindset. I'm just like, oh, the punk rock, please. Now's the time to make some punk rock. Current day. Right. And I will say, the messages that they have on their music, Crass's messages, were very important in their time and in that moment. And, someone did it. Someone should be saying it. Someone should be doing it. So, like, just because you want to sing about politics and that can be like problematic as far as standing the test of time in that way, like, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't. And I think their themes, continue to be universal despite the fact that at the time, it was this moment in time, and a lot of times they were focusing on this lady right here and whatever events happened in that moment. Yeah. But just to expand on that before I go into audio analysis, because I was thinking this through. Things change as you get older. Um, you may, feel exactly the same way as you did when you were 17. I was 17 and 18 when I was really, really into punk rock. And 16, 19. Teenager when I was obsessed with punk rock. Now, current day, I am 47. So 30 years removed from this stuff, and you continue to evolve as a person. I would say generally, like, in my experience, soften a little bit, maybe soften. And so as a 47-year-old woman, I went off on this tangent of thinking about what happens to a person and their commitment to ideas in such a severe manner whenever you continue to change through life. So, like, an example that I thought of is like Rage Against the Machine. Like, dude, that 1992, and we're going to talk about that album, their self-titled album, Rage Against the Machine, man, that shit holds up today. If that thing was released in 2020, I mean, there would be more rioting than there was, I imagine. Oh man, such a great album. But can be problematic if like you are having such a commitment to these types of themes and ideals, and then you get signed to a major label and now they're paying you tons of money to what? Continue to talk about like fighting the system? It's just like, how does that even make fucking sense? It was like, I mean, I think about myself at 47. It's like, I love this music. I love the energy, but like I've worked for the state. It's like, dude, I am the man, look no further. So yeah, I mean, how are you going to continue to put out angry music about power and people with money and the system when now you've gotten super wealthy doing it? That's the question. It tends to look different, when you're on the other side. And I think that's what happens to some of these bands and musical acts when they get enough notoriety. Or like, what are you going to do if your whole thing, to take it from a different angle, is like you're super vegan and like your doctor decides that you have some kind of like vitamin deficiency and then like advises that what you need to do to keep yourself alive is eat meat. And then you've like, have your YouTube channel that's totally devoted to like, leading millions of people to being like militantly vegan. It's like, dude. Or like, what if all these punk rock friends that you thought were so loyal to you and the ideal that you were living by, what if they like steal from you, or what if you like get assaulted sexually, like in the commune that you happen to be living in? So if we're going to directly call some shit out, I'm continuing with that theme. And this is what I'm doing right here, like playing devil's advocate. These are just examples. Like, I'm just saying, like, anarchy is a great idea in theory. A good, powerful idea that we like to yell about. But I'll tell you a little story. I lived in the Bay Area for like 7 years like went to school, worked, did sound in the Bay Area, all over San Francisco, Berkeley, Oakland, Emeryville, all of that. And like at some point, because you live and are a resident of the area of California and of the surrounding cities and communities, you get like bulletins. And I don't remember, this must have come in a letter. Like I got a letter one day, and it was advising everyone in the area that the Oakland police were like so thinned out, I guess, and underfunded, or there was so much crime. There was just like a reason that I guess they didn't really say, but they were advising all of us that they were no longer coming out or responding to any calls of all kinds of stuff. And then they gave a list, and it was stuff like burglary, assault, rape. It was like beyond the, unless you were actively like being stabbed and dying. They were just like, F you, we're not coming out. I'm just like, I mean, I'm just saying, this is what I'm saying. Like, anarchy is a good idea in theory. I mean, yeah, like, until it's you. And as a woman, I was just sitting there thinking, like, how terrifying that is. Like something like that could possibly be happening to you. And it's not even that like it's happening and then you get to have some justice or something, to remedy the effect of what's happening to you afterwards. It's them directly saying to you that, like, even if this is happening to you, we're not going to help you. I was like, wow, okay. Okay. Right. Oh my God, I'm going off. Yeah, you know what? I mean, we're going to look at this from all the different angles, I suppose, if we're going to do this. So yeah, continuing along that thought. I didn't mean to get so fired up there, but we want to look at, as we explore how these things sort of devolve and end, what caused Crass to break up. Here we go. And so this is from the same article, Penny Rimbaud. There we go. So we'll read a little bit about exactly what happened because, this is what we're talking about, despite my theatrics there. It's like, you're living by a set of ideals. You're committed to a set of ideals. Everyone around you is also in that commitment, and you are making art towards that purpose, art and music, and you are powerfully trying to get those around you and the outside community involved in your ideal and that commitment. So, I mean, you put it out there like that. But it lasts for a certain amount of time, so let's see how that resulted in the breakup. So here's from the same article. The way the breakup is described there is that there was an increased interest by the British police in the band that resulted in your being wiretapped, and you all just decided, okay, this isn't what we necessarily got into this for. It's no longer fun. Maybe we should call it a day. Is that accurate? So this is Penny being asked if their breakup was because of the police, the government, like following them. And he says, no, that's not a very good interpretation of how it happened. It started happening when we did a miners' benefit, a benefit for the strikes down in Wales. It was the last gig we ever did. It was in the Welsh valleys where people were suffering terrible poverty through the strike. There was a horrible depression. People were at their wits' end. We did a gig. It was a great gig, and the miners' president presented us with an old miner's lamp as a thank you. And it was all heartbreaking, actually. The whole community was destroyed. We went down with a whole van of food to distribute because there was so much hardship going on. And it was absolutely ludicrous. I mean, it was a packed gig. People showed up from all over the country, and it was wild and wonderful. But was it the right thing to be doing? We had to rethink. We hadn't managed to bring about the kind of revolt, not rebellion, a revolt against authority, a revolt that could have led to some actual revolution. We failed because we didn't actually trust the people we would have to have worked with. Not that we didn't have any criticisms for them. We should have contacted the leader of the miners' union. We should have talked to him about whether or not we wanted to go beyond the line. Do we actually want reform or do we want revolution? We should have contacted people like the IRA, who've been fighting a war, not a revolution, against the British since they arrived there. So there were people who had better knowledge than us, but we didn't feel we should ally ourselves to anyone because it would put us in danger. Not us, but the picture of us. So, yeah. He wanted to do something about the situation, is what he's saying. But in order to actually make a change or cause some sort of actual physical revolt, they didn't want to align themselves because of their image of who they would have to align with. We were very well aware that people were looking to us for some sort of guidance, and it would be irresponsible for us to ally ourselves to some kind of major organization. But that's what happens all the time. Most of the time, that organization is capitalist. Bands go and get signed to a major label. But equally well, that organization can be political. And we didn't want to do that. We always said, there is no authority but yourself. Look to yourself. Don't look to any leaders. Don't look to us. And really, after that minor strike, we realized that we weren't doing the job. We needed to rethink. It was a painful process. We sort of broke up and all went our own ways. Some of us kept on trying to sort out a new position, with the major premise being a world of peace and love. Some of the others probably still think it, but aren't so active. But certainly, some of the band remain very active to this day. In fact, trying to say the same things but in a new context, which means different forms of activism or action. Yeah. So, I mean, I think, what we're getting at is there starts to develop a more mature awareness that, if you actually want to make something happen, organization involves, aligning yourself with bigger groups. And maybe they might, not have, the same type of vision. But it's the same thing as you're playing. I mean, what are you going to do? If you have a message and you want to get it out there, you're going to have to use some sort of service or way to get it out there to a huge amount of people. And that is aligning yourself with whatever somebody else is doing. Or else what? You're just going to have your message hang around in your basement by itself where nobody hears it? I mean, it's just the struggle, I guess is what I'm saying. Neither is right or wrong, but it's the struggle with having a grassroots sort of movement. And then as it blooms into something huge, what exactly does that look like? And then he goes on to say, yeah, I want to read this part because this one, I thought this was just a really good way to sum it up. So you saw that the band as a political project wasn't going anywhere. It was just a band. And then Penny says, yeah, we had come up against a wall. In a way, it was infantilizing. For us to be dancing around on stage saying, "Did they owe us a living? Of course they do, of course they do." A lot of minors came into our last gig and had probably never seen a punk band before, and they were standing in the back and they just looked sad. They had just been shown that the state owes them a living, and the state had turned its back on them, and they were suffering the consequences. So it was a bit like going to a concentration camp in Nazi Germany as a punk band and going, "We're all free! There is no authority but yourself." I don't think so. So, yeah, I mean, what he's getting at here is there's a difference between the art in showing, all of the suffering of the world and the social injustice and actually experiencing all of the suffering and social injustice. And sometimes, I mean, I guess, these are the kind for somebody who is like introspective and self-reflective, as and intelligent as these people clearly are, when you start to look at that and see yourself like dancing around on stage while somebody is actually suffering, it just looks kind of stupid. I can see what he's saying, It doesn't mean it shouldn't have been done. It just shows that it shows the depth of him as a person and the depth of their character to take a step back and be able to self-reflect in that way and wonder if like what they were doing was right or if it kind of like had become like a self-aggrandizing celebration. I mean, the last thing you want to do if you're trying to like affect social justice is to just become like some sort of dancing joke or something. So, but I will say, all of the point of this isn't to discourage anyone to writing music about the time period that they're in because they're afraid it's going to be dated. Writing music and doing creative projects that you think may affect social justice because you like definitely believe in those causes. This is not to discourage. It actually is to encourage because as you can see, like, despite what happened and despite how things continue, it's like been 46 years and we're still talking about this band and listening to this music. And the art itself, even without the message, is what stands the test of time. The music continues, the creative product itself continues. So we're going to talk about that. So let's read about that. This album. Because this album is incredible. Like I went and listened to it again. And me being, all that stuff I just said, this is coming from like a cynical person who's almost 50. It's like, that's what I expected to just be like, okay, whatever. And like, that was not what the experience that I had listening to this again. I immediately was like, yes. And I got right back into it. It didn't seem contrived. It didn't seem like something I wouldn't listen to. And it was very, very well done, like artistically, musically. It wasn't simple, it was very complex. So, this album, Stations of the Crass. Stations of the Crass is the second album by Crass, released in 1979. The record, originally released as a double 12-inch, includes live tracks from the gigs recorded at the Peatable Pub in Islington, London on August 7th, 1979. The first three sides contain the studio tracks and play at 45 RPM, while the final side comprises the live material and plays at 33 RPM. The album's title is not only a pun on the Catholic rite of the Stations of the Cross, but is also a reference to the graffiti campaign that the band had been conducting around London's underground railway system. The cover artwork depicting a wall at Bond Street tube station that allegedly had been decorated by them. I would assume they're talking about this right here, where my cursor is. So they graffitied a wall and then took a picture of it and used it as one of their album covers, I guess. And the one that's right below me, though, that album, it was like, so this album, it's long. It's got a lot of tracks, and the different versions have like many different amounts of tracks. So what they're saying here is that as a record, it was like 2 different records. So 4 sides. The version that I always had was the cassette. So it was 2 sides. But, there's a track list with like the CD version of it, and that's what I always listen to. And then now, the one that I listened to yesterday, the remastered edition of the album is amazing. Like, I'll just say that right off. This is one of the best remasters that I have ever heard. And I don't know if it was because I spent my teenage years listening to it on a shitty cassette tape, but it sounds amazing. Like, and I'll just go so far to say also that I'm going to go out on a limb and guess this is not just a remaster. They remixed this because there were parts like a delay and everything that like weren't there before and did not sound like that. So I'm going to say that's my guess. A remastered edition of the album, complete with new artwork by G. Voucher, designed specifically for the small size of a CD case, was due to be released in March 2009, but was delayed because of the contentions with former members. The remastered Crassical Collection version, that's the one I was listening to, was eventually released in October 2010, including a 64-page booklet of liner notes by Steve Ignorant and Penny Rimbaud, as well as bonus tracks in the form of the band's 1979 John Peel session. The live tracks are not included. Okay, so here we go. This is the track list. This is the one that I would always listen to. So we have, see, it's a lot. And there are even more. You can see above that. There was like 37 on the records. But I would always listen to this one. Well, they're shorter songs. Yeah, they are shorter songs. But 25. So Mother Earth, White Punks on Hope, You've Got Big Hands, Darling, System, Big Man, Big MAN, Hurry Up Gary, Fun Going On. That's supposed to be on, I think. Crutch of Society, Heard Too Much About, Chairman of the Board, Tired, Walls, Upright Citizen, The Gas Man Cometh, Democrats, Contaminational Power, Time Out, I Ain't Thick, It's Just a Trick, Prime Sinister. And then you've got like compilations of live songs played back to back going out towards the end, which also sound freaking great. So yeah, awesome. Awesome album. Yeah. So I think as I want to talk about this album and explore a little bit of audio analysis and just things that I heard, I like to do this, as a sound tech, as an engineer, as an adult. I like to go like track by track and like list different times and like different processing that I hear and things of note. And I did that here, but like the notes came out totally chaotic and all over the place. And I was just like, you know what? This is appropriate for Crass, and I am leaving it like this. Because the music itself is kind of chaotic, and it provoked that in my mind as I was trying to like hurry and make notes, and then something else would pop out, and I would like have to, focus on that, and then my attention would be focused elsewhere. So I'm just gonna like go through it in the way that I wrote it and see if this makes any damn sense. Hopefully it will. But yeah. So, as I said, I was listening to the Classical Collection 2010 Remastered Edition through Spotify on my glorious JBLs that are right next to me. And what I noticed, again, like great remastered edition. The song Darling, number 4, didn't used to sound that good. This is the one that's like, yeah. Hello, hero. Hero, hello. Hello, hero. Hello, hello. That didn't used to sound that good. Not, the reverb on the cymbals and the whole thing. It just makes it huge. Like it used to sound so small. And every instrument like in that mix, they're huge. And when she says ha da 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 da, when she says that delay didn't used to be there. So this is why I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that this is a remix also. I believe I'd never noticed that before when I was younger in my memory. I don't think that was there because it was really prominent there. And then the cymbal hits on this track, number 4, Darling, they're so long, reverb wise. They almost like bleed into the next hit. And the bass, man, I was loving the bass guitar on this album. I was like, I never noticed this before because when I was younger, I just didn't know what to listen to. But the bass is like bigger and flabbier. It's good. And then so what I got to, where's the one that says System, number 5. Yeah, System. Okay, so listen to this because if you've never heard this before, this bass player is playing bass chords on the song, is what I hear. So listen to he's playing. My friend does this a lot. He plays chords on the bass, like he's playing guitar. It could just be like 2 strings or whatever, but those are bass chords. So listen for that and see if you can pick that out. And they're big and flabby, and I like that. They're just huge. And then the fast rapping, like in the Cockney accent, fast speaking, rapping, and then the fast snare on this song, System. The whole beat is crazy snare. That's what I noted here. That's a lot of snare. I was just excited about this. It just sounds so good. I know, I love this album. And then Big Man, Big MAN, track 6. These guitars sound like ripping, screaming weapons. Like they have one in each speaker, so like one in each ear, and then the bass is in the middle and the center. And I noted here, like, this is a band you really have to read the lyrics for, because the lyrics are amazing and they go so fast and the accent is so thick that like you may not be able to pick out what somebody's saying. But yeah, get all the lyrics and read through that to be able to understand, because then you'll really get a better picture. The guitars in general, they're like, this is what, oh man, I was laughing about this. They're using like if you ever have one of those like old digital guitar pedals that has like every freaking effect, like the group pedal that has every effect in it, and it's they're like the phase setting that no one ever uses, like at the end, like maximum 80s metallic robotic ripping distortion. It sounds like to me like aluminum foil metallic, or like a detuner pedal It's just, yeah, I was laughing about that because you play with all of them and you go through the whole thing and you're like, "That one sounds crazy." And they're like, "Well, we'll use that." And it works. It works for them, for sure. And then that flabby bass, like, throughout all of it, is just I said, it's like a fucking battering ram tank. Like, that's, what I imagined in my mind. So, yeah, then number 8, fun going on. My notes here, like, listen to this because the bass guitar also is distorted. Like, that's another thing. Distorted wah pedal bass guitar it stuck out to me on this track, which I appreciate because that's not a lot of people do the distorted bass guitar, and that really like made that track. Barely any kick drum noticeable, like throughout this whole album. All that like cracking, like drum line snare. I mean, it might as well been if you've ever been to a parade and there's like a marching band, and then they have, or even out on the field, like at a sporting event, and they have like the marching band with the guy like standing there with the snare, just like a cracking throughout the whole thing. So, man, that snare drum. Um, Crux of Society. When noted here, it's like the vocal sounds so good here. Heavy distortion on it. The accent is so thick that you really just don't understand like half of what they're saying. But really good, really well done there. And then the guitar. The guitar is like the two guitars, like a tin can opener, you know? And the way that it felt and sounded like in my head, if I can describe this, I kind of like drew it out. Is like you've got both of the guitars are like aluminum saws. Like you've got a saw um higher up on this is my left side in a one-way melody going either up or down, and then on the other ear you've got a lower like pitched aluminum saw going the other way in a melody. So one going up, one going down, like the harmony of each other a lot of times, like interplaying aluminum saws. And then you've got like a toy monkey, like snare and cymbal, like that little toy that's like and then somebody's talking like angry gibberish in another language right there at you. And then underneath that, you've got like a flabby tank. And it's like, to me, it's like having the top of your brain pried off and then filled with a person dictating something really important into it that you feel subconsciously while a snare typewriter types it down in there. And also, the bass is like reprogramming your soul. And then those little guitar chunkies and the fast snare with it, it's just insane. Like listen to 2 minutes and 20 seconds in Upright Citizen. The little guitar chunkies and the fast snare right there. That's what I was talking about. Like listen to that. It's just crazy. It's crazy right there in that song. Yeah. And then so tired, number 12. Listen to how tired it just didn't used to sound like this. It fills your whole ear now. Remaster that's great. It sounds amazing. It's so full now, like every instrument. And then same listen to Walls. The clarity, the reverb is exceptional, and the female vocal. So The Gas Man Cometh. That mix is great. The guitars sound like they're sirens, like falling on you, and they hurt. It hurts me, man, right in the tinnitus. Purposefully hurts. I would imagine, because it's painful. And the guitar chords in that track, "The Gas Man Cometh," are like an axe coming down. And then the chords are barely chords. They're so high end only, like not any lows or any mids. And it fills your whole ear. Fizzy metal distortion, so the bass can shine and also be distorted and flabby. That's very important that I noted there. They really have those guitars like cutting in at the top, so the bass has room to occupy. The distorted bass has room like there at the bottom. And then that held note at the end of the song, "The Gasman Cometh." The pain. The pain. That's saying they're like, if it's too loud, you're too old. I was thinking, it's too loud and I'm too old. Guilty. Like, that shit hurts. And yeah, number 16, Democrats. So, spoken word poetry, female spoken word poetry. Yeah, okay. No, this one is like the crazy one with all the sound effects. So, poetry, super phased modulated sounds, the sound of detuned church bells, supposed to sound like bombs, but maybe, yeah, low frequency oscillator like white noise coming in. Yeah, they were using, it wasn't just like guitars. They've got something else going on, like a low frequency oscillator coming in, making those noises is my thought. Lots of sounds coming in. Feedback manipulated everything. And then, so the female's like reading the poem, and then the second guy, this is like a male spoken word, reading the same poem, like coming in after hers, like in a roundabout way, like row, row, row your boat. And then he comes in, and it creates, as it fills up, like a full soundscape experience. Like his poem as the same as hers, but like at a lower volume. And when it says, like, listen to this song, Democrats, track 16, like that's audio art right there. Like the poem is powerful. It's a powerful poem. And I wanted to read it. I wanted to read it. Yeah, I'm going to read it. Deal with it. Yeah, I want to read it because, like, here we go. Let's see. This is it. This is it. I'm not going to be disrespectful and do it in the accent, although I kind of want to because it should be. But yeah, this is what we're talking about. Like these lyrics here in that poem. It's so powerful. The way she delivers it in that spoken word manner. Like, I am not he, nor master, nor lord, no crown to wear, no cross to bear in stations. I am not he, nor shall be, warlord of nations. These heroes have run before me, now dead upon the flesh pile, see, waiting for their promised resurrection. There is none. Nothing but the marker, crown or cross, in stone upon these graves, promised of the ribbon was all it took, where only the strap would leave its marks upon these slaves. What flag to thrust into this flesh, ragged bandage mop in their flowing death, taken aside, they were pointed away, for God, queen, and country, now in silence they lie. It's so powerful and good. And really, it's anti-war, you know, um, beautifully written and disturbing. Read the rest of the poem, listen to the song. And then at the end it says, I'll make no subscription to your paradise, over and over and over again, just to drive that message home. So yeah, really well done there. And then number 17, track 17, Contaminational Power. Listen to those tones, that bass tone opening it, the tone of that bass guitar. It's just like someone standing, playing bass right in front of you, like they might as well. It's so pure in that way. And then the guitars too sound great. When the vocal and the drum comes in though, something happened there. Like if you listen to that, the version on Spotify I was listening to, like there's a loss of volume immediately. And if you want an example of like what compression can do if it's used in that way, you can like hear it going in and out. And my thought and guess is that like you have enough room volume wise for those opening notes, and then as the rest of the band and all of the audio content comes in, it's hitting that compressor over and over, um and you can hear it. So you need to there are ways that you can adjust for that instead, like just take the whole thing and yeah, there are ways that you can adjust for that instead of having it like smack up against that threshold over and over. Yeah, this is what we're talking about. Compression. It's called pumping and breathing. And so this is what you don't want to hear it, but also more than that, like if it's done too, I said that's in another video, if it's done too extremely, not only can you hear it, but you can feel it, and it's nauseating. It can be. Not here. It didn't get to that level, but Time Out, number 18. Great song, first of all. Listen carefully. See, oh yeah, no, this is something else I noticed. If you can identify, listen, those very subtle repeated lines in the background, you can hear it. I don't think that's intentional delay. Like when he says, teaching little Johnny to shoot a gun. And then right after it, you can hear to shoot a gun. A terrific ways his father to get to know your son. Like you can hear it. I don't think that's intentional delay. I think that is something called bleed through. And that happens whenever you record onto analog tape and the tape is pressed together because it's in a reel, like on a roll. And sometimes the magnets, like the audio information, like press so much against the piece of tape that's underneath it or above it that the audio information will like bleed through onto the next layer. That's my thought about what happened there. But so yeah, overall, overall, I wanted to go off on this tangent about like the way that things change whenever you are so emotionally and idealistically indebted to like a concept or a cause. However, what changed my mind was listening to the music and feeling the feelings again. And I was able to like really get in touch with the universality of like the messages that are still ongoing, no matter like how old you are. It doesn't matter if you like softened and or become like more cynical as you get older. When I pull this up and I listen to it, I have the same feelings, the same energy, the same kind of agreement, like with the basic messages that are going on. So if you think that you're like too mature and too calm for these things, I would suggest like pull it up, listen to it again. If you're young, pull it up, listen to it. Like you don't have to be like totally knowledgeable about every single world event that happened in that day. And, as I reflected on the way that I've changed and the way that this music changed me, and thinking about like, I thought like, look at the way that I live. It's like, look at how I always say in every video, keep yourself as the final arbiter. I mean, this is the punk rock ethos that we're talking about here in general. Like, um, make sure you run things by yourself as the final word. Don't just take the word. Question everything, anything. So, the music and the art, the feelings at the core of who you are still ring true. And Crass is an amazing band. extremely talented. If you want to get assaulted by art, listen to this. Pull up Stations of the Crass. Listen to this album. Listen to this band. And that snare drum just might change your life in the way that it changed mine. So, until next time, I will be back. Hopefully, I can work on my audio lesson now. I had to do this because I was super excited about it. But until next time, I will see you guys again. Thank you for being here. Thank you for liking music, appreciating, and being open to all different genres. And I will see you again.